If God is your all in all, you ought to act like he's your all in all. He didn't promise every day was going to be a good day, but he still promised he's going to be God. Amen. And if he's your all in all, he is your all in all. I want to move on just from that song. That song proved the A part of my thought. So I can just mosey on down to the B part of my thought. I'm so used to now, I'm getting spoiled with having everything on the screen. So sometimes I reflex action look up and I don't have it, but we'll read from Genesis chapter 22. I ran a revival at Greater Faith a week before last, and they had everything on the screen too. It just kind of more convenient. But Genesis 22. I'm just on. Y'all know the story, and I'm just going to lift a couple of verses for the text. Genesis 22 is the story about when Abraham had to sacrifice Isaac. 22:1 says, sometime later, God tested Abraham's faith. God called, and he replied, here I am. Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love so much, and go to the land of Moriah. Go and sacrifice him as a burnt offering on one of the mountains, which I will show you. And verse 3 tells us the next morning Abraham started out, but I want to skip verse 12. Verse 12 says something that a lot of people miss, and I want to make sure that you know that, because the thought is hidden in this text. Verse 12 says, don't lay thy hand on the boy. The angel said, do not hurt him in any way, for now I know that you truly fear God. You have not withheld from me even your son, your only son. Squeeze in that text is the thought that I'd like for you to look at. And it's just like 4 or 5 words. For now I know. For now I know. All right, here's the subject I want y'all to consider this morning, and y'all can go ahead and sit down. Here's the subject I want y'all to consider this morning. And the Lord dealt with me with this a lot this week, because I'm beginning to believe most of what I preach to you, he deals with me during the week. My thought is, can God, when I was dealing with it during the week, the question was, can God trust me? And I took it a step further, and I say, can God trust you? And I took it another step further, and I say, can God trust us? That's going to be my subject. Can God trust us? It's just basically going to cut through all of the nitty-gritty this morning. This whole text with Abraham has to do with the fact that God tested. If you look at the King James Version said tempted. The New Living says tested, but the word tempted means to prove or to test. In other words, what God was looking for is God wanted to know how committed and how devoted Abraham was to him. So in determining the commitment and the devotion, God put Abraham through a test. And if you would look deep down, the purpose of the test was to see if God could really trust Abraham. That's the whole purpose of the test. Now, from a theological perspective, and I'm not going to argue that this morning, if God is omniscient, then God should have already known what Abraham was thinking and what he was doing. So I'm not going to deal with that, the omniscient part this morning. I just want to deal with it from an experiential situation. I think God set up a question for us that we need to really check ourselves out to find out where we really are. Can God trust me? With all God has done for you, can God really trust you? And I really had to meditate on this thing. And I know most people was, like I did, try to shove it off. So I rephrased the question. What is it that God cannot trust you with? What do you have or what do you want that is more important than what God wants you to be or what God wants you to do? What do you have? Is it some woman or girlfriend or man friend in your life that shouldn't be in there, but you don't want to get them out? But for God to really trust you, you're going to have to choose between them and God. Is it money? Is it finances? Are you so head bent on being rich that God can't trust you with what he give you because you don't use it for his kingdom? You use it for what you want for you? Is it your time? Are you so busy doing so much that God cannot trust you with the time that he gives you? Because how many of you know time one day gonna run out? You don't have but so much time. So the time that you have, are you gonna use it for your purpose? Or are you gonna use it for God's purpose? When God give it to you, can God really trust you with it? Now, I don't want you to look around at anybody else. I want you to look at yourself and answer the question, can God trust me with what he has given me? How about this? My talents and my abilities that God has given me. I can sing like an angel in the nightclub, but won't come to church on Sunday. I can get in a conversation, I can convince thousands of people to do things, but I don't witness to anybody about Jesus. Can God trust you with what he has given you? You see, I'm finding out it's the little small simple things that really make us examine ourselves. Can God trust you to lead the people he assigned to you, whether they like what you do or not? Can God trust you? Can God trust you to dissociate from your friends because your friends are going one way and maybe the way you need to go is another way? Can God trust you that when things get thick and thin, can God trust you to say, no, I'm going to do it the Lord's way? Can God trust you to establish order in your family? I was talking to Minister, well, he was talking, I was listening. I was talking to Mr. Green while we were riding down the road, and we were talking about how do we get more men involved in the church. And he had a plethora of ideas and suggestions. And I had one question. You can talk to your blue in the face. If somebody don't want to hear it, what do you do? Y'all, this thing with God every day is getting serious. It's been serious all along, but I must admit to myself, sometimes maybe I didn't take it serious enough. God is serious about when he gives you an assignment or he gives you a purpose in your life. God takes personal interest in the fact of whether you do it or not, because he did it for a reason. You were not chosen by accident. God chose you because he had a plan for your life. And the question is, the plan he has for you, can he trust you to follow his plan, or will you follow yours? I know this ain't a sweet Christmas Sunday. And I we talk about Jesus sweetly, but we don't live sweetly. It's easy to sing, I read this story while I was studying. There was a man that tied a rope across Niagara Falls. This side of the falls and that side of the falls. And he was a tightrope artist. And the crowds would come and cheer, and he would ride a bicycle on a piece of rope from that side to this side. And he would turn around and he would ride the bicycle back, and he would turn around and he'd ride it back and he'd turn around. And he did that 3 or 4 times, and the people were cheering. He said, do y'all enjoy this? He said, yes. Do y'all think I can do this? They said, yeah, we have seen you do it. He said, do y'all think I can do it again? They said, yeah, we think you can do it again. He said, well, how many of y'all willing to come get on the bicycle with me? And nobody wanted to get on the bicycle. As long as it wasn't causing them any problem, he could do it. But when it came for them to do it, they didn't trust it any longer. They trust him doing it, but they didn't trust themselves doing it. And it's like that in life. It's like that in life. Can God trust you to follow the plan? It's just that simple. And I'm 3/4 of the way through my sermon, because people be preaching for an hour and people don't hear you after the 10 minutes no how. Church, if you want God to work in your life, God has to know you trust him. If you want God to give you more, God has to know you trust him. If you want healing power, you want loving power, you want teaching power, God has to trust you. Because why would God give you talents and abilities and gifts and families and situations, and then you use it not for his purpose, but for your own purpose? I wrote down a couple of things. Like I said, I'm 3/4 of the way through. I wrote down a couple of things why God can't trust us. Sin. Sin separates us from God. Why God can't trust you to do stuff that other people can't do? You choose sin over God. But that's not deep. It's simple. You don't choose the sacrifice, you choose the sin. So how do you expect God to trust you? I wrote down, how do you expect God to trust you when you're greedy? It's all about you and not about God. It's all about what I want, not about what God wants. It's not about God's plan. And somebody saying, Brother, how can you call me? You don't know my situation. You don't know my house. How can you say I'm greedy? Well, if the shoe fit, if the shoe don't fit, then don't put it on. But you need to check yourself if the shoe hurting your foot and it ain't your shoe. You know, anytime you stick your finger in the sole, that's the one that hollers. But can God trust us? Well, and I struggled with this all week because I looked at myself and I done looked at, y'all know this will be my 40th year. 38 pastor and 38 pastor to be 40 in the ministry. And I sat down this week and I did an examination of my life and I kept asking this question over and over. Not only can God trust me, what am I doing for God to even want to trust me? And I didn't want to share this burden by myself. So I come tell y'all. I look now, you know, there's always, and just I can be real this morning, there's always a faithful crew that comes to church. But I can understand if it's ice or snow or tornado or hurricane, but rain. Now let's just be real. But rain, now this wasn't in my sermon, but rain. You know, when you have rainy situations in your life, God still shows up. God just don't show up when the sun's shining. God shows up with you when you have some rainy situation. Just like that song said, we can trust God. But the question is, can God trust us? About 85% do. And that's all I want to leave you with. I want to leave you with, and don't look at nobody else. This ain't about nobody else. This is about you individually. Can God trust you? Can God trust you with the time he give you, the talents he give you, the tithe of the money he give you? And before you answer that question, examine your past record. Don't talk about what I'm going to do for God. Your past record indicates your presence. And your presence is a determination for where your future going. And I started looking at myself and I went, oh my God. So I wanted y'all to be a part of. Then I wrote down, and I want lust and lie and power and other negative gifts. All of those things stop us from being in a place where God can trust us. And here is the thing in the Bible that got me. Most of the trouble God had was with his people. Most of the trouble Jesus had was folk from the church, not the ecclesia, from the Jewish synagogue, from people who were going to the temples. Have y'all all ever noticed that most of the problem Jesus ran into, most of the people that were mad at him were church people? Not this ecclesia, but the one from the temple. Let me do this. They were temple people. Temple leaders, temple people. And here's the thing that when I was studying, it got me. Most of the time, the people in the church would do better if the leaders were doing better. Every time you read about somebody got mad at, let's just do it with Jesus' crucifixion. They had the church leaders were the one who plotted with Pilate to kill Jesus. It was the church leaders who, when Jesus and Barabbas was out, church leaders told the people, the crowd, save the criminal, but kill Jesus. Because they didn't like what he was teaching, they didn't like what he was preaching, and what he was doing was opposite of what the custom of the church was doing then, and they thought they were right. So that the best way for them to do church like they want, to have it what they want, was to make sure Jesus got killed. And that was their greatest error. Killing Jesus. Because Jesus had made a statement a lot of people miss. He said, for if I'm lifted up, he said, if you kill me and I get up, for if I'm lifted up, I'll draw all men unto me. What you doing thinking you hurt me is really helping me, because I got to die and go in the grave before I can be resurrected. That's what Jesus was saying. And now that Jesus has done all that for us, can he trust us? While I was studying this week, I made my mind. For whatever I got left and whatever I got, I'm going to dedicate it. I wrote down, I made up my mind that God can trust me. If he couldn't trust me before now, going into 2024, he can trust me. My Uncle Reb, y'all remember Uncle Dove, used to say that thing, say that when the Lord, he had all these sayings, and say that thing when the Lord wrote his name down for ministry, the Lord said, Dublin, if I write your name in the book, they're going to hate you. He said, write it, Lord. He said, if I write your name in the book, they're going to talk about you. He said, write it, Lord. He said, if I write your name in the book, you're not going to have friends. He said, write it, Lord. I would suggest to us going into 2024, somebody ought to consider having their name written in the book, which indicates that God can trust you no matter what the world think about you. Don't you know it's a lot less important to worry about what people think about you more than what God knows about you? Have you ever stopped to consider what God knows about you? Let's do this. A test is done primarily for two things. A test is, number one, either to do something to us or discover something about us. And when God wants to know if he can trust you, he will test you. And it's all in how you handle your test. Because your test is going to show how much you love God and how devoted we are to God. And as we start leaving now out of 2023, I don't want you to go into 2024 on any illusions about your relationship with God. Because if God can trust you, God will use you. Abraham is nothing but an example of God trying to determine whether a man that he has given a great assignment can trust him. And again, not dealing with the theological issue if God is omniscient, should he had known what Abraham gonna do, because some of y'all been around me long enough to pick up that question. I just want to deal with what the words of the text says. Here's what the words of the text says. God comes to Abraham. He said, Abraham, I want you to take your only son to a mountain where I'm not going to tell you and sacrifice him. I don't know if any of y'all ever asked a question about that. But if you know the story, Abraham had two sons, Ishmael and Isaac. So why would God say take his only son if Abraham had two sons? That's one thing about reading the Bible, boy. There's so much in there. Once you dig and start studying this, there's so much that causes you to you start reading for one point and you see something and you go back and dig for something else. Very few people, when I read this thing, said, God, only son. Well, not only was he not the only son, he wasn't the oldest son. And in the Bible, the oldest son is the son that's important. But in this particular case, God chose Isaac for the lineage of Jesus to come through. So Ishmael wasn't even counted. Read your text. He said, take your only son. Well, but that was his only son. That was his only son with Sarah. But it wasn't his only son. So watch this. Does God have a way of separating his people from everybody else and find a way to bless his people better than he blessed everybody else? And I'm not going to even go through this whole thought of what Abraham, can you imagine what Abraham was going through if God said, look, I want you to take your son and sacrifice it. Watch this. God had done made Abraham wait till he was over 100 years old. He gave them the son when she was 90. He was 100. He gave them a miracle. And now God is saying, take the miracle and sacrifice the miracle on the hill. I mean, wouldn't you be in turmoil saying, God, why would you give me this at this late age and now come back and take it away from me? And I'm trying to live faithful. I don't understand, God. And not only that, how do I explain that to my wife? Because this is our only son. After all of the trouble we went through with the other son, with my wife giving me her servant, why are you going to take this one? I can imagine Abraham had a sleepless night, but here's what the text says. The text says early the next morning, Abraham got up, got Isaac and his servant, cut some wood for the sacrifice, and started to where God sent him to go. The text, I want y'all to look at this. The text doesn't say nothing about Abraham questioning God. It says, well, I said what I thought he would feel, but there is nothing in the text that said Abraham asked God any question. The next verse says, in the next morning. Y'all mighty quiet now, but if God come and ask you for yours, tell me what you're going to be able to do. If God came and said, look, I want that who you love, or that what you love. How if God said, look, I need for you to come out of your house and become homeless? How many people can say, all right, Lord? What if God said, you just build this new house, and what I want you to do now is I want you to give it to somebody. You move out and you ain't got no place to go, and you don't know how you're going to pay for it. God said, Abraham, I want you to give me the thing you want more than anything else. And I know it's going to hurt you, but I want you to do it. So how devoted are we to God? How much are we willing to give God? How much can God trust us during the tests to decide for him rather than us? That's the whole question. And he and his servants and the donkeys that were carrying the load went to the bottom of the mountain. And he told his servant, stay here, and me and the lad will go yonder. Since y'all so quiet, I guess I better try to preach a little bit. Watch this. Watch this. There becomes a point in time in your life when nobody else can go with you. There becomes a point in the time when you got to decide and you got to leave everybody behind. Mama, daddy, sister, brother, you got to leave everybody and say, what do you want me to do, Lord? You know, we sing that song, I'll go if I have to go by myself. You don't mean it. Because if you did, you got to realize what it is to walk alone. Now, some of y'all are astute with the text. Some of y'all are astute with the text. Some of y'all, pastor, he didn't go by himself. He took Isaac with him. And I'm so proud I'm y'all pastor and y'all picked that point up. I'm so proud I'm y'all pastor and y'all picked that point up. But Isaac was the sacrifice. Isaac wasn't going along to help. Isaac was the sacrifice. So a lot of times when you take the sacrifice with you and you love the sacrifice, you by yourself. But I'm gonna close. But that's 95% of the time. Here's the real thing that got me. Here's the real thing that got me. He said something to the people that went with him to let us know God can trust him. He said, y'all stay here. Me and the lad are going yonder, but we'll come back. This was before he got to the mountaintop now. He said, but listen to what he's saying. We are going, but we coming back. Well, how can you say we going, but he coming back if he sacrificed? Y'all. I guess this don't excite y'all, but it excites me. I love these questions. Abraham said at the foot of the mountain while it's going up, y'all stay here. Claire said, me and the lad. We gonna come back to you. Watch this, watch this, watch this, watch this. You know how God can trust Abraham? Now, this is me inferring from the text. Here's what I got. I think the Lord had done been in a relationship with Abraham so long, and Abraham already had the promise that Isaac was the preferred son and that the lineage was going to come through Isaac. And here's what I think Abraham was saying. Brother Albert, here's what I think Abraham was saying. Abraham was saying, even if I kill him and sacrifice it, God will raise him up from the dead and bring him back. Yeah? Abraham was saying, if I don't do it, God gonna work it out. And if I do sacrifice him, God gonna work it out. See, man, y'all, how many of y'all in here know that no matter how bad your situation is, the Lord will work it out? Y'all over here, man. Watch this. And watch this. God has already worked it out before you even see the problem. If you check things out, when God puts his plan into place, he already has a solution to the plan. Here is the problem. Here's the problem. We lose our relationship with God, or we lose God's trust when we get concerned about, we need to know the facts before God gets ready to tell us. Ah, Lord. It's something about trusting God that you got to go when you don't know nothing. You got to watch the little things that the Lord did. The Lord said, Abraham, not only do I want you to sacrifice your son, but I want you to take him to yonder mountain to a place I'll tell you. Isn't that torture? You ain't even telling me where I'm going. But I just got to trust you to lead me where I need to go. I want y'all to know, going from 23 into 2024 with all what's going on in the world, you have to understand there are some things you're not going to know the answer to. What you're going to have to do is just trust God. Somebody going to say, well, how I'm going to trust God? Here's how you're going to trust God. Look back over your life and see some of the stuff that God has brought you through, or that God has brought you out. Watch that. You will have a record and a history of what God has done for you. And you got to hold on to, if God has done it for me one time, y'all don't hear me. If God has done it for me one time, what's going to stop him? This is written down. For we learn the reason why we need to have faith in God in any crisis or difficulty in our incomplete knowledge of God. God does not require us to know every single detail before we obey. Have mercy, Lord. You have to obey when you don't know. That's the essence of obedience. There are many things he has not chosen to reveal to us yet. Lord have mercy. I'm going to say this. That's why I got hope for us African American people. Things look dim for us and dark sometimes. But the one thing I do know, after 400 years, when I think everybody else would have been dead and gone, somehow or another we keep making it. Y'all don't. I don't know another nation. Now, I know we got the story of how God delivered the children of Israel, but I don't know another nation of people that in the last 400 years have had, and now there has been great tragedy with the Japanese, there's been great tragedy with the Jews, but right here in the good old USA of America, I don't know another nation of people going into the new year that has struggled and dealt with struggle and dealt with struggle and dealt with law change and dealt with evil people and dealt with crooked people, and the more they put on you, brought drugs in and infested our community with heroin and cocaine and crack, and it would have taken anybody else out. Y'all don't. It would have taken anybody else out. And don't get mad at me when I say they, because ain't none of us had on no airplanes. Ain't none of us had on no boat, nothing to be bringing no drugs in here by. And none of us had the connection with those in power to get it done. Not on a major level. So we have a history of God making a way for us. And we're gonna have a watch night program, and one of the things I put on the watch night program is a panel discussion, because a lot of us don't even know what watch night about. You ever ask yourself why we have watch night? Don't know where watch night start? Ah. But you know, here it is. We can get so super spiritual and don't understand some of the experiences that the Lord has brought us through. And nobody couldn't have done it but the Lord. Well, Abraham, y'all stay here. Me and the lad coming back. Watch this. Watch this. Somewhere going up the mountain, Isaac had a question. Isaac asked a good question. Isaac said, Father, I see the wood. I see the fire. Yes, sir. But where's the sacrifice? Lord have mercy. I see the wood. I see the fire. But where's the sacrifice? And Abraham's answer was just as great to me. He said, but God will provide. Y'all know him. The sacrifice. In other words, every time Abraham responded, it was the idea that God, you can trust me in this critical time. The text says, they went up there and they built the altar. Watch this. And I'm going. I don't believe they built the altar overnight. It took some time for them to build the altar. And Abraham, while he's building the altar, looking at his son that he's about to kill, saying God will provide a sacrifice. The text says, after the altar was built and the fire and all was ready, he bound Isaac and laid him on the altar. Not only did he bind him and lay him on the altar, but he raised the knife over him to stab him in his heart. In some place between coming down and getting to Isaac, the Lord said, stop. Said, don't slay the land. Don't put your hand on him. Don't hurt the land. He said, for now, this is about back to my text. For now I know. See, that's where I want to get you. For now I know. Does God have a for now I know minute with you? Are you still dealing with you? Have you put everything that you love on the altar and said, God, whatever you do, it's all right with me. All I want to do is please you. God said, for now I know. Y'all, and this is the seriousness of preaching. There's too much honey with no vinegar. Now let me say this. Two of the things that help in healing is honey and vinegar. Honey makes it taste good when it go down. But you know, everybody now, if you got a little high blood pressure or something like that, there's a drop of little vinegar in it. The vinegar got a bitter taste, but it's good for the stomach. Good for the blood pressure. Here it is. God has a plan for your life, and your life is going to always include some honey and some vinegar. But both of them are for your betterment. Both of them are because God loves you. Both of them because God wants to bless you. You have to decide whether or not you're going to act and live so God can trust you. Nobody else is going to be able to do that for you. No program is going to be able to do that for you. No fancy idea is going to be able to do that for you. It starts with you making a decision. That God, you can trust me no matter how tough it is. Now, Abraham didn't want to deal with the toughness, but once God said it, turn to your neighbor and say, once God say it, you're going to have to deal with it. But tell him this is a shout point, what I'm about to tell you today. God has not brought you into anything he can't get you out. That's what somebody shout about. Because before he put you in it, he already had his way to bring you out of it. That's why you ought to be able to tell somebody, say, I love the Lord. Because he heard my cry and he pitied every one of my groans. See, sometimes, watch this, it's good to have a shout on Sunday morning, but it's also good to have a shout all during the week long. I'm going, can God trust you? And when you go through some difficult situation, instead of fussing and complaining, can you go ahead and have a shout and a praise? Are you going through some situations at home that you cannot understand? And can raise your hands and say, Lord, I don't understand why I'm going through what I'm going through. I don't understand why I'm having the problems and the crisis I have. I'm trying to live the best I can. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to praise you anyhow. Tell your neighbor, so you got to learn how to praise God anyhow. See, some of y'all can't do that because you're in a place now dealing with what you might lose. You won't lose nothing that God can't give you back. I'm going to my seat, but now, if you would call Job and ask Job, say, Job, will God take it all from you? Job would say, yes, he would take it, everything from you, but be glad you read verse 42. He'll give it all back to you, and he'll give you more if you just trust God. So Revelation going into 2025-4, it's not enough for me to ask God. I ask myself, can God trust me? It's not enough for you to individually ask yourself, can God trust you? We have to ask ourselves as a collective group, can God trust us? Can I handle change? Can I adjust from what I want to do? Can I make a sacrifice of my desires for God's desires? And I want y'all to know I struggle with those issues more so now every day, because what I bring y'all on Sunday, I'm already a first partaker. I struggle with some hard issues. I think sometimes my wife, I get frustrated with me because she start talking and she don't know I'm dealing with some hard internal issues about myself. I can't talk about it because it's so real to me. And particularly in something where I find myself falling short. Because I'm trying to please God. And talking to nobody don't help you. Sometimes it's just him. Sometimes I sit down in my study and just look at the wall. I'll start studying and just stop, just gaze off. Because I try to look at my pleasing God or my pleasing me and how they work. And I want y'all to do that when y'all leave here today. And be real with yourself. Now, some people can be selfish and you can always find an excuse to please yourself. Or you can always find an excuse, God can trust me, but can God really, 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 really trust you with everything? Ask God why this house not full. The question is, can I trust you? Can I trust you to study, to pray, to preach, to fast, to love, to share, to witness, to understand? Can you do the plan? So until you're willing to do the plan, why you ask me that question? You asking me a question, the word done told you the answer. If you're not doing what you're supposed to do, how do you want me to bless it? So I want us to go into 2024 happy but serious, and know that God has a plan for your life. Not one of y'all born in this world, or not one of us born in this world, God didn't have a plan for. And part of Abraham's journey was to have to deal with the issue of what happened when God asked him for everything he loves. Can God trust him to respond the right way? Can God trust you? That's the question. Can God trust you? I done asked myself, can God trust you? And whatever you decide, you and God will know. Because God sees your heart. For man looks at the outside, but God looks at the heart. So you can say anything to anybody you want. The door of the church is open if you stand.